Well, good morning, folks. Welcome to It's All About Faith in Every Home of Church. We're still in 1 Peter, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12 today. There's 25 verses in this book, so we're going to do 12 today and a balance tomorrow. There's so much information in the book of Peter, 1st and 2nd Peter, that it takes some extensive study. His intelligence and his artistic and articulate way of doing things is exceptional. And he speaks very plainly, but he covers a lot of territory. And so we want to say this morning, good morning to Alabama. And I'm going to start with a little bit of something here that I heard this 1957. What is that, 60 years ago, while I was in the service. And there is in the South of the United States, among those who live and breathe freedom and carry the pride of their forefathers in their hearts, a saying. And I first heard this saying many, many years ago while serving in the service of the country. Now, I don't intend to cause any hard feelings in one way or the other, but this is such a good saying, and it demonstrates the patriotic feeling of those Southern folks who, for the most part, still have the memories and the skill of self-support and survival. Now, whether or not you agree with this saying, you'll find they really do not care if you agree with it or not. Southern folks have a way of not only being wonderful and nice and genteel, as they use that word, but they also have a way of being very determined. So whether or not you agree with this, it's said half in humor and half in serious manner, and I've heard it 1,000 times. And I must say, the way things are going right now in what is considered in the South Yankee land, we must just be about ready to lean on those, as they were called in the Civil War, Southern boys, for their willingness to stand and fight for what they believed in. The saying is this: save your Confederate money, boys, the South is going to rise again. I love that. I do. I've heard it 1,000 times. And I think of it every time I see the Confederate battle flag. On a serious note, if you think for 1 minute that the South, from South Carolina on down in through Texas, is afraid to once again secede from the Union if they feel it necessary for the preservation of their freedom, I would suggest you might want to reconsider. I've witnessed firsthand the dogged determination and independent will of Southern folks when they felt they were right, and found it very interesting to behold their reactions. Now, this, of course, is just my view. Now, let's start in with lesson 2. Peter begins this writing by telling the people, the Jews. Now, these Jews have been scattered. They've been scattered everywhere because of persecution, because of beheadings, because of whippings, because of crucifixions. It was still rough at this time. Peter was alive here. Christ was not, but Peter was. And so the persecutions were terrible. Lay aside these temptations and evil speaking, and do this. As newborn babies, desire the milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby. Now, thinking about this, we recognize not only that those that were new converts to the new law, that Christ had closed the book, remember? Christ's teachings and do have much learning to do we who are mature Christians also have much learning to do. Still, and we seek this learning as a baby seeks the pure milk of the mother's breast. We never get through learning. I've been reading scripture for decades, and I never get through learning. When we get through Revelations and start again in Genesis, we'll continue to learn, because there is so much information and so much to learn that you just never get it all. Now, we turn now to mention the stone, or stones as it were. These are the precious Christians God holds dear, and who, as Peter, are ridiculed and persecuted daily. Remember when Jesus turned to Peter and said this, "Upon this rock I will build my church." We've all heard that ever since we were children, if you've been going to church. He's talking about the cornerstone. We read in the scripture of stones that were rejected. The stone that was rejected by the builder. And these stones that were rejected are now the Christians, and they were rejected by the old law, by many of their own Jewish kind people. But they took that stone that was rejected and made it the cornerstone of the building. And the cornerstone of the building is where the building starts. They lay it out from side to side from that cornerstone. That's Jesus Christ. And these stones that have been chosen by God, God has called his people Jews out of the darkness and the old law and the old way and into the light of the new way and the teachings of Christ. Now these stones are spread all over the world, as we just discussed. Peter explains this to them. In times past, they were not a people. Before God chose them, they were just not a people. But now they are a people of God because God chose them. In times past, when they weren't a people, they had no mercy. God chose them as a people, but now they've obtained mercy. That's our scripture. That's what we're reading. They're advised to do good and to speak well and to do so in front of the Gentiles, who now speak ill of them and who persecute them. And in doing so, these same Gentiles will, on the day of God's visitation, be their good works before God. Do good, speak well of your neighbor. And on the day of God's visitation, that neighbor that you speak well of, that neighbor that you do good for, will be your good works before God. So that's our lesson for today, and I love you guys. We'll be back again. And remember, everybody has 10 minutes a day for God.